Before we get into this, if you are actively looking at luxury property on 30A right now, I want you to reach out to me directly. Call or text me at 850-231-7026. My name is Jason Stevens. I'm with the Stevens Group. My team and I are here on 30A, and negotiation strategy is one of the most important things I do for my buyers every single day. All right, let's get into one of my favorite topics in all of real estate. Here's something most buyers don't fully appreciate until they're in the middle of a multi-million-dollar purchase. The price on a listing is just a starting point. It is not a destination. And knowing how to move from that starting point to the best possible outcome for you on price, on terms, on timing, on concessions, that is negotiation. And done well, it can save you tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars on a single transaction. Now, I've been working the luxury market here on 30A for over 16 years. I've represented buyers across Rosemary Beach, Alice Beach, Watercolor, Water Sound, Seaside, Kaya Beach Resort, and all over 30A. And in that time, I've seen buyers win deals they had no business winning. And I've seen buyers lose deals they should have had, simply based on how the negotiation was handled. Today, I'm going to walk you through exactly how I think about negotiation when I'm representing a buyer at the $3 million plus level. I'm going to share real stories from deals I've worked. I'm going to show you the mistakes I see buyers make all the time and give you a framework you can actually use. Because here's the truth. Negotiation at the luxury level on 30A is not just about offering a lower number. It's about understanding what the seller actually needs and then structuring a deal that gets you what you want while giving them what they need. When you do that well, everybody wins, and you walk away with a better deal than you ever expected. Before we talk strategy, I need to give you some context that's specific to this market, because 30A is genuinely different from most luxury markets, and those differences affect how you negotiate. First, Zillow is not your friend here. I say that respectfully because I understand why buyers look at it. It's accessible, it's visual, and it gives you a number. The problem is that number can be wildly misleading in this market. Let me give you a real example of what I mean. You could have a home in Rosemary Beach on one side of a fence worth $6 million, and right next to it on the other side of that same fence, technically in Seacrest Beach, a similar sized home worth $1.5 million. Same square footage, side by side, but because of the community, the construction quality, the amenities, the brand, and the lifestyle attached to that address, there's a $4.5 million difference. Zillow doesn't always see that distinction. It sees two similar sized properties next to each other and averages accordingly. And if you walk into a negotiation relying on Zillow estimates as your anchor, you are either going to dramatically underbid on something worth buying or overpay on something that doesn't deserve the price. What you need instead is a buyer's agent with deep, specific knowledge of the individual communities. Someone who can tell you not just what homes are selling for in general, but what this community commands and why, and whether the pricing on this specific property is justified, aggressive, or actually a deal. Second, this is currently a buyer's market. That matters enormously for your approach. A few years ago, during the peak frenzy of the pandemic real estate boom, buyers had very little leverage, multiple offers on everything, waived contingencies, properties going over asking before the sign hit the yard. That is not the market we're in right now. Today, as a buyer on 30A at the luxury level, you have real leverage. You can typically ask for a discount off asking price. You can ask the seller for contributions toward your closing costs. You can negotiate on terms. The wind is at your back, but only if you know how to use it. Third, every seller has a motivation, and understanding it is everything. Some sellers need to close fast. Some need to close slow. Some are emotionally attached to the property and need to feel like the buyer is going to love it. Some are purely transactional and just want the cleanest offer. The negotiation strategy that works for one seller might be completely wrong for another. And the agents who figure that out before writing the offer are the ones who win the deals. I want to share a story with you that I think illustrates this better than anything else I could say. I just went under contract on a condo deal where the buyer and the seller were $125,000 apart. That's a significant gap. In a lot of negotiations, that kind of spread kills the deal. Both sides dig in, neither one wants to blink, and the transaction falls apart. Here's what I did. Instead of just going back and forth on price, I asked a question. What does the seller actually need here? What I found out was that the seller had rental bookings running through the end of July. That rental income was important to them. They didn't want to close early and lose those bookings. So here's how we structured it. We negotiated a closing date at the end of July, which allowed the seller to keep every single rental dollar they had coming in through the summer. In exchange, the buyer got the property for $125,000 less than the seller's original position. The buyer saved $125,000. The seller kept their rental income. And that deal happened not because we fought harder over price, but because we found the thing the seller actually valued and gave it to them. That is the mindset shift I want you to have. Price matters, but price is one variable in a much larger equation. Closing date, occupancy period, contingency timelines, inspection terms, personal property inclusions. All of these are negotiating levers. And sometimes the combination of 2 or 3 of those levers is worth more to a seller than another $50,000 on a price. Here's another example. I've won deals in multiple offer situations where there were other buyers on the table without having the highest price. How? By doing exactly what I just described. Calling the listing agent before submitting the offer and asking real questions. When does the seller want to close? Is there flexibility on possession? What matters most to them in this transaction? Are there any terms that would make this easier or harder for them? Most agents don't make that call. They just submit the offer and hope. I make the call, I find out what the seller's situation actually is, and then I craft an offer that speaks directly to their needs. All right, let's talk about what not to do. Because I see these mistakes regularly and they cost buyers, sometimes significantly. Mistake number 1, anchoring to Zillow or online estimates. We already touched on this, but it's worth going deeper. The problem isn't just that Zillow gets the number wrong, it's that buyers anchor to that number emotionally, and then they approach the negotiation from a flawed starting point. I've had buyers come to me convinced a property is overpriced by $1 million because Zillow told them so. And after we dig into the actual comparable sales in the specific community with specific amenities, with the specific construction quality, we find out the listing is actually reasonably priced, or in some cases, even a deal. If that buyer had led with a lowball offer based on a bad Zillow estimate, they might have insulted the seller, killed the relationship, and lost the property. Always let your agent pull real estate comps, not automated estimates. Actual closed sales in the right communities with the right context. Mistake number 2, coming in too aggressive without context. There is a version of negotiating hard that works in your favor and a version that blows the deal up before it starts. The difference is context. If a property has been sitting on the market for 6 months, if there have been price reductions, if the seller is motivated, there's room to be assertive. A strong opening offer that reflects the actual market reality is not insulting. It's business. But if a property is fresh to the market, priced correctly in a desirable community, coming in 25% below, is probably going to get you a polite rejection and a cold shoulder on any future communication. Sellers have egos. Listing agents have relationships. You don't want to be known as the buyer who wastes everyone's time with insulting offers. The right approach is to let someone who actually knows the market tell you where to start. When a buyer comes to me and says, I want to offer X, I tell them honestly whether that's smart, too aggressive, or actually too conservative, given what I know about the property and the seller. I'm not going to let you leave money on the table, but I'm also not going to let you blow up a deal that you actually want. Here's mistake number 3, not understanding the current market conditions. This is a big one right now. We are in a buyer's market on 30A. That means you have leverage you might not even realize you have. And I see buyers negotiating as if it's still 2021, being overly cautious, not asking for what they could reasonably get, afraid to make requests for seller contributions on closing costs or credits. Right now, in many situations, you can go in below asking price and ask for a contribution towards your closing cost. You can ask for repairs based on inspection findings. You can negotiate on terms. The market allows it, but you have to know the market well enough to know when to push and when to hold back. And that changes property by property, community by community, and month by month. Mistake number 4, ignoring terms and focusing only on price. Every element of a contract is negotiable. Price is one element. Closing date is one element. Inspection period length, financing contingency, personal property inclusions, post-closing occupancy. All of these are variables, and the right combination of variables often matters more to a seller than a few more dollars. Never walk into a negotiation thinking only about price. Think about the whole package. Let me pause here for a second. If you're watching this and thinking, I need someone who actually thinks about negotiation this way representing me, I'd love to talk. My name's Jason Stevens. I'm with the Stevens Group on 30A, and this is exactly the kind of strategic thinking I bring to every single buyer I work with. Reach out to me directly at 850-231-7026. You can call or text or whatever's easier for you. Tell me what you're looking for and where you're at in your search, and let's have a real conversation. If you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, please do. I put out content specifically designed for luxury buyers and investors in this market, and there is genuinely nothing else out there like it. Hit subscribe and the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Now let's keep going. Multiple offer situations are less common on 30A right now than they were a couple of years ago, but they still happen, especially on well-priced properties in the most sought-after communities. And when they do, here's how I approach it. The first thing I do is call the listing agent directly before we write a single word of the offer, and I ask them real questions. When does the seller want to close? Why are the main reasons they're selling? Is there a timing need? Do they need a fast close or a delayed one? Is there anything about the property they're hoping the buyer will take care of? Are there terms that would make their life easier? Most buyer's agents skip this step. They just look at the asking price, write up an offer, and submit it. And sometimes that works. But when it doesn't, when you lose a multiple offer situation because you didn't know something you could have known, that's painful. The information I gather in that one phone call can completely shape the offer I put in front of the seller. And it demonstrates something else too. It shows the listing agent that I'm a professional who communicates well, who asks good questions, and who is focused on getting the deal done cleanly. In a multiple offer situation, that matters. I've been in this market for 16 years. I have deep relationships with a lot of the top agents up and down 30A, and there are times when my offer gets serious consideration, not because it's the highest number on the table, but because the listing agent has worked with me before. They know how I operate, they know I'm not going to create problems, and they know if they go under contract with my buyer, we're going to get to the closing without drama. That trust is worth something. It's taken 16 years to build, and it is genuinely a competitive advantage for my buyers. Now let me talk about timing, because it's a negotiation lever that a lot of buyers don't use deliberately. The busiest season on 30A runs through spring and into early summer. More buyers are active, more competition. Sellers have more leverage during that window because there are simply more people walking around through doors and writing offers. But outside of peak season, the dynamic shifts. Sellers who listed in the spring and haven't closed are sitting on properties heading into quieter months. Their motivation often increases because now they're not making as much money on rental income for the summer season. The slower months are coming. Their willingness to negotiate on price and terms often increases with that. For a serious buyer who can be flexible on timing, a fall or winter purchase on 30A can be a really smart move. Beyond seasonality, days on market is one of the most important data points I look at when advising a buyer on where to start their offer. A property that has been sitting for 90 days with no price reduction tells a different story than a property that hit the market 2 weeks ago at a sharp price. One of those sellers is probably more motivated than the other, and that affects your strategy. Here's something that not enough buyers think about. Seller motivation is always worth investigating. Why is this person selling? Are they moving, upgrading, downsizing? Did they recently purchase another property and they're carrying two mortgages? Are they a developer who needs to recycle capital? Are they a retiree who is simply ready to simplify? These are not nosy questions. They are strategic ones. And when I understand what's driving a seller, I can craft an offer that speaks to their actual situation, not just to the price printed on the listing sheet. I want to bring this back to something practical before we wrap up. Great negotiation in luxury real estate is not dramatic. It's not a hard-nosed standoff across a conference table. Most of the time, it looks like this: thoughtful preparation, good communication, and a genuine effort to understand what both sides actually need. It's knowing that a seller who has rental bookings through July probably cares more about those bookings than about squeezing out another $10,000 on price. It's knowing that a seller who is already under contract on their next home is probably motivated to close fast and move on. It's knowing that the listing agent you're dealing with values professionalism and that a well-organized, cleanly written offer is going to get a warmer reception than a sloppy one. It's knowing the market well enough to have a real conversation with a buyer who wants to come in at an aggressive number and being honest with them about whether that's smart or whether it's going to cost them the deal. And it's knowing when to push hard and when to make a concession that costs you very little but means a lot to the other side. That's what 16 years in this market looks like. Not just knowledge of the communities and pricing, but the judgment to know what to do with that knowledge in any given situation. All right, let me bring it all together. If you're a luxury buyer on 30A, here is your negotiation framework in plain language. 1, throw out the Zillow estimates, understand what properties actually sell for in the specific communities you're interested in based on real comparable sales data. Let someone who knows this market tell you what a property is actually worth. Number 2, understand the current market conditions. Right now you have leverage as a buyer. Use it, but use it intelligently, not recklessly. Number 3, before you make an offer, understand the seller's motivation. Ask the questions. Find out what they actually need. Price is one variable. Timing, terms, and structure are the others. Number 4, in multiple offer situations, make the phone call before you submit. Gather information, craft an offer that speaks to what the seller actually wants, not just what you're willing to pay. Number 5, work with someone who has the relationships and the track record to add credibility to your offer. In a market this relationship driven, who brings the deal matters. 6, stay flexible. The buyer who wins is rarely the one who digs in on every single point. The buyer who wins is the one who figures out which points actually matter and fights hard for those while finding creative ways to give the seller what they need on the rest. I've helped buyers save hundreds of thousands of dollars on transactions along this coast, not by being the loudest or most aggressive voice in the room, but by being the most prepared and the most strategic one. If that's the kind of advisor you want in your corner, let's talk. Call or text me directly at 850-231-7026. That number's on your screen right now. My name's Jason Stevens with the Stevens Group. My team and I are here on 30A to help you. And if this video gave you value, please subscribe to the channel. I put out content like this regularly. It's designed specifically for buyers and investors in the luxury market right here on 30A. There is no other resource like it. Just hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, and I'll see you in the next one.